I believe they want him dead. Those forces are very powerful, and so we do need a lot of people. We need the power of the people to stop this. Well, it's actually the health wing, but the prisoners call it the hell wing. As his brother, I can really tell the effect that this whole process is having on him. Nils Melzer again called it a slow motion murder before our eyes. Things don't change from the top down. It's always change comes from the bottom up. I think in 2014, Julian wrote that this would be the last free generation. And I think he's right. Digital surveillance is becoming so complex, and that any regular person cannot even understand it, cannot understand the ways that they're surveilled.
Welcome to a new and very interesting, amazing episode of Deep Dive with Gabriel Shipton. Hi, Gabriel.
Hey, Marc. Good to be with you.
Thank you. I'm absolutely honored talking to you. I saw you live at the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam with Stella Assange, and it was just great seeing you two guys talking about Julian. And I'm very honored and humbled having you on my channel today. And you are a film producer, and of course, you're the brother of Julian Assange. And with his father, you're fighting against the extradition to the United States. So thank you for your time. And the first question, of course, how is Julian doing?
Well, Julian's been in a maximum security prison just outside of London. He would have been there for 4 years coming up on April 11th. There is a never-ending or seemingly never-ending extradition proceeding that has been playing out for the last 4 years. And that is an extradition proceeding that is to the United States, where he faces a potential jail sentence of 175 years, which we see as essentially a death sentence for Julian. So he is in this the hardest prison in Britain, with this death sentence hanging over his head. So this has worn him down over the years. Nils Melzer, the ex-special rapporteur on torture, found that Julian was being psychologically tortured. In 2019, Nils Melzer, he went to visit Julian with 2 independent experts, and that's the conclusion that they came to. And Julian's situation hasn't changed since then. I visited him at the prison at the end of last year, and during the visits we have a laugh. We talk about our family and the lighter side of things. But as his brother, I can really tell the effect that this whole process is having on him. Nils Melzer again called it a slow motion murder before our eyes. At the end of 2021, Julian had a minor stroke, and the complications from that, he's still suffering from the complications from that, and that's just a sign of the toll that this process is taking on his body. He's still, I'm always amazed, whenever I see him, always amazed at his capacity to keep fighting, his fighting spirit, the flame inside him. The same flame still exists in there. And we're just trying to keep it alight, trying to keep him going to get through this, and that's all the things that happen on the outside, all the support, all this global wave of support. That's what really keeps him going inside that hellhole that is the Belmarsh maximum security prison.
Yeah. That's why we do this interview, to support him, to wake people that they support him, and that's why you have to share this video right now, actually, so more and more people get aware of the horrible conditions Julian is treated actually in the prison in the UK. And you already said you saw him last time end of the year, so you see him once a year, or you talk to him on the phone like every week or once a month. So yeah, when was the last time you had contact with him? Was it last year?
Yes, so that was the last time that I spoke to him, was when I visited him at the prison. I speak to him on the phone occasionally, but not often. I'm in Australia, he's in the UK, so, it sort of pulled our family apart, this, what's going on, what's been perpetrated against Julian has really, separated our family and not, we haven't been able to remain in contact like a normal family. Some people say, I did an interview with Chris Hedges. He does a lot of work with people in prisons, with prisoners, and educating prisoners, teaching them basic things, how to read and write, and helping them through their high school in prisons in the United States. And an observation he made that when a prisoner is in prison, the family is in prison too. And, we don't suffer like Julian, but we definitely feel that weight, feel the weight of the oppression that he is going through.
Yeah, definitely. And you already mentioned he is in Belmarsh, actually, and this is one of the most notorious prisons in Great Britain. Most of my listeners probably never heard of this prison in the UK, but it's the worst of the worst, actually. So if you do a deep dive, you just see it's like maximum prison. So how is he treated there? Did he say something? Do they treat him differently to other prisoners? And do you think that the people who did this to Julian did this on purpose and put him to Belmarsh?
Well, over the years, when he first went to the prison in 2019, when he was taken from his refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, the conditions, he was in his cell, isolated in his cell, solitary confinement, 24 hours a day. He was in a wing of the prison called the Hell Wing. It's actually the Health Wing, but the prisoners call it the Hell Wing. And it's a place for the most desperately suicidal, terminally ill prisoners. So it is, the worst, it's the most depressing place and the worst place you can put someone inside that prison. And that's where Julian was being kept when he was there. And, all of the external pressure, pressure from, his lawyers, pressure from politicians in the UK or politicians in Australia or Germany, didn't manage to change that situation for Julian inside the prison. What changed the situation for Julian inside the prison, what got him out of those conditions into a different part of the prison, was petitions from the prisoners. So there is an immense solidarity inside the prison among the prisoners with Julian. And it was 3 petitions from the prisoners that eventually led to him being moved out from that solitary confinement into another cell where he's still in his cell 20 hours a day, but the conditions there are better than they were. And I think that's, to me, always a great example to people that it doesn't matter, things don't change from the top down. It's always change comes from the bottom up. And in that situation, it was the prisoners. It wasn't high-paid lawyers. It wasn't politicians or world leaders or anyone like that who changed Julian's circumstance. It was the people who were around him. And really, that is just, to me, that's a perfect example of what is going to break Julian out of prison, what is going to set him free. It's the movement that he created. The movement, for transparency in government, for justice. That is the movement that is going to free Julian. Those are the people who are going to free Julian eventually. Now, why is he in the situation he is in? Well, back in 2010, WikiLeaks published these vast troves of documents, unprecedented leaks about the wars in Afghanistan, the wars in Iraq, the Guantanamo Bay detainee files about torture at Guantanamo Bay, and a huge repository of diplomatic cables, which was a sort of unknown history of our world. And so since that day, since back then in 2010, when Julian published that information, he has been pursued one way or another. He has been detained in Britain, first under house arrest, then in the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years, and then now in the prison coming up to 4 years. So it's obvious that the message that has been sent here is, if you publish this information, if you publish what citizens really have a right to know, what our governments are doing in our name, if you publish that, you will be you will have no rights. You will have as many rights as the chair I'm sitting on. And they can just be taken from you instantly. And that is a sort of show of force to everybody around the world, that if you do this, if you publish this sort of information, this can happen to you. And it doesn't matter, how famous you are. It doesn't matter how many high-powered lawyers you have. We can reach into any country around the world. The DOJ in the US can reach into any country. They can reach into Britain. Julian wasn't in the US when these cables were published. He wasn't on US soil. He has never, he doesn't really have he's never had a parking fine. But they can reach into this country and they can grab you and put you in prison or detain you for as long as they like. So that's really what this is about. It's about sending a message to journalists everywhere, to publishers, to technologists who want to use the internet for good, who want to use these technological tools of encryption, of the architecture of the internet. They want to use that to increase justice around the world. Well, this is what's going to happen to you.
Wow. Scary, actually. What do you think if it would have been another country, for example, Canada or France? Would it have the same implications, or would Julian just still be free?
No, I think there would have, they've been pursuing him. They would have moved heaven and earth, I think, to really go after Julian.
Because he's a public enemy now. But I think the US is much more mighty, for example, than France. That's my question, actually. Is it just the US because they're so mighty, because they have the world currency and the biggest military and so on? Or you think it would be the same if it would have been Germany or Norway or Italy?
Well, yeah, it's a sort of different circumstance, isn't it? But I think Julian isn't the exception here. He's not. What is happening to him is a new rule that has been created that sets an example to everyone around the world, to particularly authoritarian regimes. I think Germany or France. I don't know whether they would have done this if the secrets like this have been leaked, but you can look at things like Saudi Arabia, and the Jamal Khashoggi murder. That came after what's happening to Julian. So really, the US has set this example to everyone that journalists are fair game, publishers are fair game. That if you want to do this, you can go after them and go after them with impunity. And so we saw that with Jamal Khashoggi, and it's really those authoritarian regimes that are doing this, doing this a lot. And now they've got an excuse, they've got a template to use, and that's Julian Assange.
Yeah. And was he or is he treated differently in Belmarsh to other prisoners, like worse or better? Or do you have any experience about it? Did he say something about it, or he couldn't?
No, he's treated the same as other prisoners now.
Okay.
Like I described when he first got to the prison.
Yeah.
There was different treatment. He's still in his cell 20 hours a day, so that's a little bit unusual. But, among the other prisoners, there's great solidarity. When I go to visit him, some of the other people visiting are like, stay strong, Julian, putting their fists in the air for Julian and things like that. So there is a great amount of solidarity inside the prison for Julian. But no special treatment.
Okay. Yeah, it's a fantastic example actually that the movement has to be from the normal people, to put the pressure to the politicians, and that the real change comes from people, from us. So everybody can change something. So every viewer on this channel, for example, everyone can change something, can do something. So be a multiplicator, share your wisdom, share this video. And I think, you saw the example Gabriel just gave us. High-paid lawyers didn't change anything, or politicians. It was the prisoners actually, And I think it's amazing. It's a fantastic example. So everybody can do something if he wants to, because all the time everybody thinks, "Oh, I'm such a small person. I can't change anything." It's not true. Everybody can do something, And I saw Stella. I saw you in Amsterdam, and I was blown away. I thought, oh my God, I have to talk to them. I have to support them. I have to help them. And it's the WikiLeaks and Julian's passion actually is so important for all of us, for democracy, for peace, for everything. And we see that we have a paradigm shift out there, and people want to know the truth. So how is WikiLeaks doing right now? And perhaps you can say something about the mission of WikiLeaks.
Well, WikiLeaks, it's been under attack for these past 12 years. The site's still functioning. Some of the archive is offline, but it is still functioning. I'm not really involved too much in WikiLeaks, but generally, you look back. Julian saw these problems in journalism, in publishing, problems with these large media corporations. And WikiLeaks was really a way to solve some of those problems. If you look back to the Iraq War and how the Iraq War was sold to the public through the weapons of mass destruction that were never there, that was reported on far and wide, even the New York Times has said, well, we made a mistake on the weapons of mass destruction. So, there was this sense, I think that, there was a real problem in the media, and that the media weren't actually, telling the truth and about these wars. And Julian identified that. So one way to counter that problem was to decentralize the media in a sense. So similarly to the way Bitcoin decentralizes money, WikiLeaks decentralized the information, decentralized the leaks. Previously, all those leaks, they sat behind these corporate structures. So they sat behind these large media corporations. Leakers were fed into those media corporations, and then sometimes they would publish, sometimes they wouldn't. And so what Julian used was a way to create a really safe place for leakers. In the digital world, as things were changing, then it became very easy to trace leakers. So Julian created this very safe and very easily accessible place for leaks to go. And it attracted leakers. And, Chelsea Manning famously, she took her leak to some of these media corporations before she went to WikiLeaks, and they all turned her down. And so that's the perfect example, really, of why WikiLeaks was made, is because without WikiLeaks, we might not have known any of this information. And so really it was a way to, attract leakers, protect their identities, and then hold the media accountable. So it's a sort of way, an idea of scientific journalism. So, Julian had a science and programming background. He was a mathematician, and in science, you have the source material, you have the information, and you can hold up the paper and compare the information and make your own judgment of what's in it, is whether it's correct or not. In journalism, unfortunately, a lot of the time you don't get the source material, so that you can't really tell. As the public, you can't tell what is written is true or not. But with WikiLeaks and this method of scientific journalism, the public, you or me, or you or I, could read a report and then look at the leak itself and really compare what was written in the report to what was in the leak. And so it kept the media honest in that way. They could no longer use these sort of government-sanctioned narratives, or they couldn't write sort of these puff pieces or these propaganda pieces, because we could compare them. We could keep them honest. We could compare the leak to what was written in the articles. And so it really revolutionized journalism, and I think we're continuing to see that with this sort of explosion of independent media. That's really exploded now, and I think that's a continuation of the WikiLeaks story. This decentralization of media, it continues on, and these media corporations have sort of lost so much public trust now that a lot of people are turning to these alternatives, and I think that's a continuation, and that's really Julian's legacy is this independent media landscape.
Yeah, absolutely true. It's a zeitgeist. People look for different opinions, for different sides, and for another opinion beside the mainstream. And we see it in our channel, for example. Sometimes we have more viewers than the public television broadcasting company here. And that's definitely a sign. And yeah, it's Julian's work, actually, which started it. So, one question came up in my mind, actually. For what is he in the UK prosecuted exactly?
He is being held in the prison at the request of the US Department of Justice. And so the US Department of Justice are attempting to extradite Julian from the UK to the United States to face charges of espionage. So he has 17 charges of espionage and 1 charge of computer intrusion. So, and these charges relate to that publishing that I was talking about earlier, the 2010 Chelsea Manning leaks. So there's publishing of war crimes, publishing of torture, publishing of corruption. That is essentially what these charges relate to. And they sort of go deeper than that. A part of the charges is for solely possessing this information. Part of the charges are for publishing this information. So it really is making journalistic activity, publishing activity, illegal at its very core. And so it's an attempt by the US National Security, DOJ, to sort of stop this reporting overseas, because they're saying, okay, we can reach into any country and apply our laws there, but also stop it at home. So they're attempting to, because the US has some of the strongest free press laws in the world. The UK doesn't have First Amendment, right? Like they have some draconian press freedom laws in the UK, but the US, is seen as this beacon of, freedom of speech. They have the Statue of Liberty and all these sorts of things. So it's about stopping the journalistic activity and the publishing of national security information in other countries, but also applying that at home. So applying that to the journalist or publishing rooms around the US. But I think every sort of, we've seen in the US now, just at the end of last year, the New York Times wrote a letter to the Garland DOJ, calling on these charges to be dropped because of the threat that they pose to publishers. And the New York Times were joined by the 5 big media partners that partnered with WikiLeaks on publishing these information. So they partnered with El País, Le Monde, Der Spiegel from Germany, New York Times, and The Guardian. And so those 5 media organizations got together at the end of last year, and at the end of November 30, and they wrote a letter to the Garland DOJ. So this is a signal now that publishers around the world are seeing this threat for what it is, a threat to their power, a threat to their stature. So I think we will see more and more, and this wave will build and build around this because of the threat that it poses to our democratic rights, to sort of our essential rights to know what governments do in our name.
Yeah, we have to explain to the audience that the Espionage Act was originally only supposed to be for spies, actually. And now it's targeting publishers, journalists like Julian and everywhere. So a few weeks ago, I read an article about Daniel Ellsberg, who wants to fight against the Espionage Act. Do you know anything about that as well?
Yes, well, Daniel Ellsberg is a heroic whistleblower. In the 70s, he leaked, which was, a historic leak at the time, the Pentagon Papers. Yeah. He was charged under the Espionage Act. And in his case, the case was eventually thrown out because the government had spied on his psychiatrist. So they had gone into his psychiatrist's office, gone through the papers, and spied on his psychiatrist. And that was the reason that his case, his Espionage Act case, was thrown out, which is interesting because in Julian's case, something very similar has occurred. When Julian was inside the embassy, the Ecuadorian embassy, where he was given asylum by Ecuador, after 2017, there was a plot or a plan from within the CIA, and this is confirmed by an article that came out at the end of last September by these 3 investigative reporters in Washington D.C. That cited over 30 sources from the intelligence community, both serving and former, that really detailed the plans that were emanating from the CIA, from Mike Pompeo's CIA, who was CIA director under Trump. And so there were plots to kidnap Julian from the embassy that made it as far high as the White House. There were plots to assassinate him that were going around in the CIA. Julian's conversations were all recorded. After 2017, there was new high-definition cameras installed in the embassy. There was microphones installed, even in the ladies' bathroom. Julian used to have conversations in the women's bathroom with his lawyers because he believed that that they wouldn't stoop so low as to bug the ladies' toilet in the embassy. But he was wrong, and this information was sent through the security company that was supposed to be protecting Julian in the embassy. They were co-opted by the CIA and installed to do all this spying and secret plotting. And that information was taken back to the US every 15 days. There's actually an active court case in Spain against the head of this security company, and the court in Spain even summoned Mike Pompeo. So they've summoned Mike Pompeo to testify. So far he's refused, but that is an active court case in Spain. So this is similar in the Ellsberg case in that what led to the unraveling of Ellsberg's Espionage Act prosecution was these spying elements, and the exact same thing exists in Julian's case. So that should be enough just to have it thrown out of court straight away. But what we've seen in Julian's case is constant abuse of process, constant arbitrariness from the judiciary, from prosecutors. And so really what is happening to Julian and the whole judicial process is this sort of thin veil that hangs in front of his persecution. And it's really a way to keep him where he is, to keep him in this torturous prison, and to keep wearing him down, and to keep setting this example that, if you do this, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what happens. You have no rights. You have no rights to secret meetings. You have no rights to legal privilege with your lawyers. We can take that away from you. So that's just another example. But this 1917 Espionage Act it's an ancient draconian law, that's made for it's originally made for spies, right? Like for spies from other countries, charged with performing espionage. That's what spies do, and so this law is for them. But under the Daniel Ellsberg was a whistleblower charged with it, but under the Obama administration, that's when the prosecutions really ramped up against whistleblowers. And so, we know President Biden was vice president then, and it was really then that the frequency of these Espionage Act prosecutions, whether they were against CIA whistleblowers like Thomas Drake, or NSA whistleblower like Thomas Drake, or CIA whistleblowers like John Kiriakou, it really ramped up during those Obama days. More recently, Daniel Hale, who revealed that 90% of drone attacks took out civilians. He was charged under the Espionage Act, and he's still serving a prison sentence in the US. But this is the first time it's ever been used against a publisher. They did try and use it against the New York Times during the Ellsberg trial. They tried to stop the New York Times from publishing by placing an injunction, but the judge knocked that down. So this is the first time that it's really been used against a publisher.
Yeah, it's scary actually, and it's a sign for me that freedom of speech is under attack actually, and that the US is number one and can do whatever they want. They can't intrude perhaps other embassies, or they can persuade or threat security companies from Spain to surveillance Julian in the ladies' bathroom. It's outrageous, actually, but there is no outcry out there, actually. And that's what's really interesting, because, for example, there's another very famous political prisoner. It's Nawalny in Russia. And for me, the question to you is, what's the difference between Nawalny and Julian? Why do Western governments fight to free Nawalny, but not Julian?
Well, Julian is a Western dissident. We don't have that many in the West, and Julian is like he's the foremost Western dissident in that sense. He has had the courage to fight back against the corruption, to fight back against injustice, and that's why he's been persecuted. Navalny is a opposition figure in Russia, and it's like comparing apples with oranges, really. Julian, is a publisher, is a journalist. Navalny is a politician, and so, it is.
But they're both public enemies. Number one.
Yes, they are, and one is idolized by the West, Navalny, and the other one is despised by the Western establishment, Julian. So, I often see, it's very stark, the contrast, right, to see that, and I often see that, and if Julian was Navalny, then it would be very much different circumstances on the reporting side, at least. Another good example that Stella always uses is, the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. So a celebrity trial that was on in London courts, the celebrity defamation trial, had tens almost 20 stories written about it, and Julian's hearing had one or two. And so it's that sort of, that imbalance in reporting that has really kept Julian in prison. I think if some of these larger media organizations were to do proper investigations of what went on, of the abuses that were perpetrated against Julian, and made those public, it would all just fall apart, this prosecution. If Julian was given the same amount of airtime in Western publications as Nawalny, Julian would be free.
Yeah, I agree. I can't agree more. That's why, we have to get to the press. We have to talk to the people. We have to talk to politicians to put more pressure on this case. And what do you think? Will there be an extradition to the US? Will they be successful, or you think you can stop that?
Well, we're fighting. We're fighting to stop it. Yesterday there was just another big protest in London. Over 2,000 people walking on the streets, fighting to stop this extradition, and we'll continue fighting to stop it. My father and I are going to the US at the end of the month to continue the fight there and to raise awareness about Julian's case all over the US. We're not going to give up. We have faith. I have faith in people, that the more people that become aware about this, the more that people learn about what's going on, the more people who join this movement for Julian's freedom, because they understand. They see this as soon as you explain it to them. They see this for what it is. An attack on their rights, an attack again. This information belongs to us. It doesn't. The government works for us. The power in these democracies, the power is with us. We delegate it to our elected officials. So this situation where they don't want to share the information with us is, as soon as you explain it to people, people understand immediately. It's simple. And so I think the movement is building, and we're going to keep fighting to stop this extradition. That being said, the forces that want not only to extradite Julian, but I believe they want him dead. Those forces are very powerful, and so we do need a lot of people. We need the power of the people to stop this.
Mm. And when you visit the US and you talk to journalists or perhaps even to broadcasting companies, how is the reaction? Are they open-minded? They are listening to you, or they just don't even meet you? So what's your experience with journalists in the US and the media?
Well, I've been in the last 2 years. I've been to the US 6 times, and every time I go there, I'm amazed by the actual people that I meet. The people on the street, the people who come to our rallies, the people who we talk to at lectures, and just the normal people there. They get it. They get what's going on. The journalists and the media are getting better. So, you can measure it. Every time we go, there is more and more interest. Some of the old prejudices fall away, particularly after this New York Times, publisher of the New York Times letter. That's really a signal for the establishment in the US that, their paper of record has said that this prosecution is a threat to press freedom. And so you can hold that up now and say, well, do you agree with the New York Times, or don't you agree with the New York Times? And so it becomes a very simple statement for most people in the US, this issue now. So I think generally it's getting better, but it is much harder work in the US than it is, say, in Germany or Spain or Italy or other European countries.
And we don't know what happened after the publishing of this letter with the New York Times. Did they get a call from the government, from Biden or whatever? And did they put pressure on the New York Times like, hey, next time, I don't know, we blow it up, or you all go to prison or whatever? We don't know, Perhaps it was just a once in a lifetime letter, and that's it, and they will never talk about it. Did you hear something about it, that they got under pressure, or?
No, but there was some I didn't hear that they'd been under any additional pressure. There was some continued reporting after that. MSNBC did a positive, like first time ever that they've done a positive report on Julian, calling on the Garland administration, or the Biden administration, specifically the Garland Department of Justice, to drop the charges. So there was, some ripples going out from that through the media. So that, we took that as a positive sign. The day after that letter came out, the Australian Prime Minister went on the record saying that he'd made representations to the Biden administration, that Julian's persecution should be brought to an end. So it has given people a little bit of cover to come out in the open and state their positions. And the Australian Prime Minister has said that they're working, they're making representations on Julian's behalf. So that's an important step and something different now that from in the past. I think that's a really important step. The German Foreign Minister, we're still waiting for her to renew her statements from before the election. We'll keep waiting and asking.
I talked to her
for Annalena Baerbock to call for the release of Julian Assange.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a difference between before the election and after the election. It's all over the world the same. They don't remember or whatever. Gabriel, did you or Stella or your father get any headwinds or attacks or threats because of your activities?
I tend not to take any notice.
Okay.
Of any of that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't, if you paid attention to every internet troll or every threat that came in, then, we wouldn't get anything done. So we just ignore it and, keep going, keep doing what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So at the moment we see that censorship has increased, and politicians seem to think that digital surveillance seems to be the answer for the most problems. Like CBDCs or social credit program, like in China, and so on. Abolishing the bills and coins, get digital money. Do you think that we will see more like digital surveillance and like a digital dictatorship, like a Orwellian nightmare? You think this is the future we're heading to?
Yeah, certainly it is. Julian, I think in 2014, Julian wrote that this would be the last free generation. And I think he's right. I think digital surveillance has, it's becoming so complex, and that any regular person cannot even understand it, cannot understand the ways that they're surveilled. How facial recognition, for example, is a huge one. People, how would you know of where you're being identified and located at any time? So I think it's becoming more and more complex and, deeper and deeper. The information, the data points are becoming more and more prevalent around the place, and it's harder and harder to, stay private in this world. So, yeah, I think we're sort of already here in that sense, with the surveillance and with the permanent record that we all have, that permanent digital record that is stored forever about us, about what we do, about who we call, who we message, where we are, what plane we catch. It's almost impossible to avoid this sort of data collection.
Yeah. Privacy is definitely in danger. And how do you protect yourself? Do you have different emails, or what can you recommend to the audience?
I sort of assume, in my situation, it's a little bit different. I just assume that all my digital communication is not safe.
Yeah.
So yes, that's my situation's a little bit different from other people, but yeah, use end-to-end encryption. There are plenty of end-to-end encrypted platforms out there. There's a new one, Keet, KEET.io, that is serverless. So it's a peer-to-peer communication platform, peer-to-peer video as well as messaging. And I recommend use that for your personal communications, and use any other communications that are end-to-end encrypted. Always check, if you're downloading an app, check what you're sharing with the app, because
Everything.
because it's one thing having the government surveil you, but these corporations are doing exactly the same thing, and using your data and selling it, and you just have to look at what's happened with the Twitter and the Twitter files, to see any data collected by Twitter just goes straight into the hands of the US government, or did go straight into the hands of the US government. So just be vigilant, and always be aware that you might you have a digital footprint. And
And I guess the Twitter files didn't surprise you, didn't they?
No, not at all. Not at all.
You were like, finally.
WikiLeaks, the Sony WikiLeaks, they put out what was the Sony emails. And so that was a trove of emails from Sony Pictures. And it was really then that leak exposed how corporate America, particularly these information companies or entertainment companies, work hand in glove with the US government. They had interchangeable government employees or Department of Defense reading scripts and making decisions on movie scripts and things like that. So I think that was evidence to me that corporations, they work hand in glove with government, particularly in the US. It was surprising some of, I think with the Twitter files, I didn't realize how petty it would be, how petty some of the block requests would be, and that they were just going and blocking their political adversaries.
COVID.
I didn't realize
COVID was.
And COVID as well. Yes, yeah. So the information campaign side, I sort of understood, but when it came down to petty sort of blue-red politics blockings, that really surprised me that these agencies are basically co-opted by one party or another. So that was very revealing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was not surprised either, but I was shocked actually that critics against the mainstream in any sector were actually blocked or cancelled, and like I mentioned, COVID, for example, it was great to see that Pfizer or BioNTech, for example, the producers of the vaccination, just had direct contact to Twitter and said, okay, please block this one. And if I reach out to Twitter, to the Twitter hotline or support, never get an answer, when scammers were in my name on Twitter, for example. So anyhow, that was really interesting. So do you think the COVID, the last 3 years with COVID and everything, is this also a part of the whole evolution for more surveillance, digital dictatorship? Because now we have this digital certificate for if you're vaccinated or not, and if you travel, you have to show that, and the WHO wants you to prove that you're vaccinated if you get to a plane and so on. You think that's a danger, and it was just something like, I don't want to say it's not a conspiracy theory, but that they started it with this whole process?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of that existed already. I think, these sort of certificates are more in our face. But, like I was saying before, this type of surveillance, we can understand, I think people can understand, we have to show a certificate or we have to have this digital record of our vaccinations. That's much an easier concept for people to understand. But to understand that your face has been scanned whenever you walk by a digital camera is much harder for people to perceive. And so I think we're sort of, even before COVID, we were already there with our digital, the sort of the extent of, our digital profiles and how we can be surveilled. So I think, a lot of the outcry over the COVID certificates and the mandates and things like that, I think is warranted and should be examined. But I think we were already there before COVID began. And I think really the service that WikiLeaks provides is really to keep the media accountable, and I think we've been missing that during this period with all these huge narratives that we see around the world, whether it's the COVID or the Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. It seems there is a single voice on these issues, and WikiLeaks really expanded the critique and was able to give people different information and keep the media honest. And so I think that's really sort of lacking in this current environment, the diversity in views, the diversity of opinion.
Yeah. Definitely, because there's no discourse anymore. For example, if you have a different opinion about a narrative from the mainstream, you get stigmatized. You're like, he's a bad boy. There are no arguments. They're just like defamation. And they say, okay, he's a tinfoil hat guy or conspiracy theorist or whatever. And if you look back in the last couple of years, so many points were actually not right. For example, during the COVID, we know now much more than 2 or 3 years ago, and the whole narrative just breaks apart. So that's interesting as well. And one very important thing is, money rules the world, actually. And now we see also digitalization of money. We see CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. What's your take on digital money and CBDCs, Gabriel?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know too much about CBDCs, but, obviously, I think digital money that is governed by the state, I think everyone takes it to the extreme where your bank account can just be switched off.
Yeah, like in Canada during the protests from the truckers, for example. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's where sort of Bitcoin and these alternatives, this sort of decentralization, that's where I think these things come into their own. So, as CBDCs and these sorts of things are adopted, I think you'll see more people turning to these decentralized solutions. I think there's this sort of cyclical nature of centralization and decentralization that occurs around our societies. Things become so centralized, and then there's an explosion and an explosion of decentralization. So I believe that as we move towards these CBDCs, I think that will promote another sort of explosion of decentralization. So I'm confident that the people behind these alternatives, the sort of like Bitcoin, I'm confident that they're really switched on people. They're the smartest people, some of the smartest people in the world. So I'm confident about these decentralized alternatives.
Yeah, like you said, we need decentralized information, journalists, media. We also need decentralized money, and Bitcoin is the only one, and is actually, I think, the solution. And I was surprised seeing you and Stella at the Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam. But yeah, I think all the Bitcoiners are also freedom fighters for free speech, for democracy, and that's very, very important. That's why it's actually a whole revolution going on in the Bitcoin scene, and that's why I also support it very much. So how can the audience, how can the listener support WikiLeaks or Julian?
Well, contact your representative is always the first one. Get involved in the democratic process. Ring them up, let them know how you feel. So tell them, ask them what is their position and why, and then tell them your position and tell them, Julian should be free. I think that is the sort of main one that we ask people to do. Talk to your friends. That's always important. Your family, your friends, they're the people you talk to the most. Talk to them about Julian's case. Talk to them about what's at stake. What's at stake in Julian's case. Give them good information is always important, because if information's coming from a trusted source, then it's much more trusted. But and there's so much distortion coming through corporate media and things like that about Julian's case. So it's always good to share good information with your friends and family, as well as contacting your representatives. Those are the couple of things, easy things for people to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I just have to mention again, Julian is a true hero, actually, and he's fighting for free speech and democracy and for all of us, actually, and we should support him. He has definitely my whole support, and if I can do anything for him, Gabriel, just let me know. Also, if you want to publish something or want to talk again about something, about the development, just reach out to me. I always am open-minded, and I would be honored talking to you, of course, again. Is there anything you want to mention or to add to our conversation?
No, just thank you for having me, and
of course,
it's been
my honor, actually.
Great talking to you.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no, it was good, great conversation.
Yeah, it was really, really great deep dive, like I promised, and I hope to talk to you again. And I know many people in Germany pray for Julian and hope that he gets free, and I do the same, actually. And I'm a positive thinker, I have a positive mental attitude. I think, he will win and we will win, and that the right thing will win in the future. So let's hope and let's fight for it. And anybody here on the channel should definitely share this video. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe and help people to get more aware of this topic. And Gabriel, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure and honor talking to you. And regards to Australia.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.